Hey, everybody. Today's episode is sponsored by the Wellness Company. Now, you all know I get on airplanes more often than some people change their socks. And when you're bouncing between continents like I do, it's easy to pick up things you didn't plan on. I'm talking about parasites. Now, you might not even know you have them. You don't get dramatic symptoms often. It's just a subtle drain on your energy, just a brain fog and things like that. And these things can live in your system for months and even years and stop your body from fully absorbing the nutrients from the food you eat. So it's like fueling your car and never realizing there's a leak in the gas tank. And it's not just from international travel. Parasites can come from undercooked meat and raw fish, tap water, even your pets. That's why I think it's smart to do a full body parasite cleanse at least once a year. Now, the Wellness Company makes that simple. Their ivermectin plus mebendazole parasite cleanse is a medical grade, easy to use, and it's a test that's designed to help clean out your system while supporting your gut and immune health. So you just fill out a short intake form and they'll ship you a 4-use supply right to your door. So go to twc.health/hotzone and use code HOTZONE. You save $60 and get free shipping. All right, thank you to our sponsors at the Wellness Company. Now let's talk about a great interview I just did recently with Stefano Ritdale. Now, Stefano's a journalist who's embedded himself deep inside cartel territory, not just observing, but exposing the inner workings of the criminal networks that are flooding America with fentanyl, weapons, and violence. These cartels aren't just Mexico's problem anymore. They're direct, and they're a growing threat to U.S. national security. Here's the conversation. All right, we got Oscar Blue Ramirez and we got Stefano Ritdale, the Chief Intelligence Officer of Arttorius, and we're going to learn a lot more about Arttorius right now. So, Stefano, welcome and thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Intelligence Officer of Arttorius. First of all, thank you so much for the invite. It's a huge honor to be here with both of you in this episode. I'm very excited for that. I'm the Chief Intelligence Officer of Arttorius. Arttorius is a AI-driven data collection intelligence analyst company. We have an app called SitRep. That's generally what I tell people if they kind of want to have an idea of what we do. It's available for the general public, subscription-based, $10 a month. Basically, think of it as an OSINT app for around the world, over 880 countries, 500 topics. You get the latest news, analysis on everything that's going on, regardless of your interest, economy, war, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. We have that all covered in a great app, and that's kind of what we do for the general public, and the same for corporate or government services. And then I am also all source news on X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, on social media, and for the past over 4 years, I've been single-heartedly focused on Mexican cartels, and that's kind of where I got a lot of the requests for interview, everything. So I'm very honored to be part of this, and I appreciate the time to talk.
So you're a veteran and
Yep.
former armor officer? Is that right?
Yes. I'm. I always forget to mention that. Yeah. So yes, I
Merchant
did.
Marine.
Yeah, I graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy in 2013. Decided to commission Army. I was 300 days on a ship as part of my training as a merchant mariner. And no offense, I said I'm never going to step on a ship again in my life. My wife has been begging me to go on a cruise ship, and I'm like, no, thank you. But yeah, I commissioned Army, did armor. And then I managed to end up, even though not officially as my MOS, I ended up a lot doing military intelligence. I was a battalion S2 in the active duty reserves. I did brigade S2, S3, and even as a contractor. But I did also a lot of Op4 analysis for major military exercises and training. Did that prior to my current position in Arttorius Tech. So had a lot of experience, kind of armor, MI, doctrine, tactics, enemy. That's literally my focus in the last 6 years has been that. And I used a lot of that also for cartels because I did a training mission in Mexico for 4 weeks when I was on active duty, trained the Mexican military police during the first Trump administration, deployed the border. And that exposure between the border and my time in Mexico for a small training mission really propelled me then to cover Mexican cartels from an OSINT perspective, because I felt like in the English side of OSINT and Twitter, or X now, Mexican cartels wasn't getting covered. Like there was a phenomenal resources in the Spanish-speaking side that just in the American English, it just wasn't getting the coverage. And as a hobby, I said, let me jump in on it. Let me give it a shot. And 4 years later, here I am talking to you both gentlemen, and hopefully, getting into the details about Mexican cartels.
Wow, that's amazing. So you just answered my next question, which is how you got into following the cartels. Now, what's your take on the situation in Sinaloa and where's the place where all the fighting's going on?
The war, actually, that is going on for more than 10 months is in Culiacan, Sinaloa. Yeah.
Culiacan, yeah, that's right. What's your take on the situation there right now?
Yeah, so so I think just a little bit of backstory, if I may, just to kind of for people to understand the kind of the Sinaloa cartel civil war centered around Culiacan, Sinaloa. You can see some fighting along the borders area of Sinaloa and Durango. It really started because the Sinaloa cartel split after Los Chapitos basically betrayed Mayo Zambada and turned him over to the U.S. So for our listeners who are viewing here, everybody I think recognizes the Sinaloa cartel. The leader was El Chapo, Joaquin Guzman, the famous guy who would escape prisons and all that. When he was finally captured, and more importantly, when he was extradited to the United States, I think for those who don't understand, once you're extradited to the U.S., from a cartel perspective, you might as well be dead. Like if you're in a Mexican prison, you still have ability to influence operations inside of Mexico, right? That's still a way to operate inside of Mexico, even in a Mexican prison. But once you get extradited to the U.S., you're done. Again, might as well be dead. So when El Chapo was extradited, the Sinaloa cartel, still had, still kind of operated as a unitary cartel, but they had clearly two factions. One of the factions was Mayo Zambada, which was El Chapo's right-hand man, and many would even argue he was the real power player within the Sinaloa cartel, right? Mayo Zambada. And then so that was his faction. And then the other faction was Los Chapitos, which are the sons of El Chapo. And the four sons are Ivan Archibaldo, Jesus Alfredo, Ovidio Guzman, and then the other son named as the father, Joaquin Guzman, right? Those were the four that formed Los Chapitos. What happened is last year, one of the brothers and sons of El Chapo, Joaquin Guzman, betrayed Mayo Zambada. He basically became an informant for the FBI, and he tricked Mayo Zambada into flying over into El Paso, Texas, where U.S. authorities detained him, right, during the Biden administration. When that happened, the Mayo Zambada faction of the Sinaloa cartel quickly coalesced to the son, Mayito Flaco, right? And so Mayito Flaco, the son of Mayo Zambada, became the leader. And obviously he looked at that situation and said, hey, Chapitos, you made a deal with the Americans and turned over my father. This is war, right? And that's what started the Sinaloa cartel civil war. And so August, September.
Okay, so
really
let me
when
ask.
the fighting happened.
Let me ask Oscar a question here, real quick. Oscar lives in Tijuana. Oscar, how has the fighting that's gone on further south in Culiacan impacted the trade, whether that's migrants, drugs, whatever, coming north through Tijuana up into the United States?
So this war in Culiacan, I was there around 6 months ago. I was documenting this, and El Tomo, El Choy, and all these impact places that they were extremely, agitated and they were going to war. It is completely affected because in Tijuana, Sonora, Baja California, all these places are controlled by Sinaloa cartel. As a matter of fact, just a big campaign was captured in Tijuana, California, that it was the leader of Cartel Arellano Felix, and they speculate that it was just a negotiation for him to be delivered, knowing the fact that he was involved with Los Mayos, that is El Flaco, that is El Flaquito, that it was one of the leaders of Cartel Arellano Felix. Everything that happens in Culiacan has a trickle and a domino effect to the north. And every single war, it is, it relates to what is happening. You will see topones, how they call it over there in Culiacan. That is topones. It is war between the same members of them with high artillery and high caliber weapons. The result, it is in the borders. It is dismembered bodies, decapitations, kidnappings, extortions. That is the result of the what are we going to do to you if this is not controlled by us. So
it's like there's a vacuum there, and that vacuum gets filled with violence as people fight over the control.
And, ultimately, at the end of the day, the Mexican government, we know right now that it is leaning towards one particular side that is not being agitated, that is not being attacked. Los Chapitos, it is obviously that the government is going after them. They have seized numerous shipments of methamphetamine, numerous laboratories, dismantled numerous laboratories. Ultimately, with those Mayitos, it is a complete different ballgame. The speculation it is that, President AMLO was financed by the Mayo Zambada. Also that, President Claudia Sheinbaum is extremely nervous of all the things that El Mayo Zambada knows, and they're letting them operate, and they're letting them massively do all this disaster that is causing in the central parts of Culiacan. So it is a pivot point to wars. And Mexico, the Mexican government has been labeling it specifically Los Chapitos as the most violent, as you can say, and seizing their laboratories and dismantling laboratories. Meanwhile, the ones that they are signalizing as being the most atrocious and the most violent are Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. Meanwhile, the Mayos, it seems like they're being protected by the government.
So do you think Sheinbaum is controlled by or bought off by the cartel?
It's obvious that, we as Mexicans, we know that the number one problem that needs to be resolved in Mexico, it is the dirty politicians. That is the number one thing. Mm-hmm. And they need to start, instead of extraditing all these kingpins and drug lords, we already know that they're going to it's like a chess piece. They're going to put somebody else in there again and again and again. Until they don't start exposing these dirty politicians, the problem is going to be resolved. We have one in Baja California, Gobernadora Marina del Pilar. Her visa was canceled and her visa was revoked. And it is signalizing to her husband that she is involved with huachicoleo, that is the enormous trafficking of gasoline. So there's a lot of these dirty politicians that they are extremely involved with the cartel, and that is what the current administration needs to do more.
So, good answer. Question then, Stefano, how does that affect your average American? All of this, we were just talking a minute ago about Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for the U.S. to bomb Mexico, which, those are words you could say, but that's maybe not such a good thing to say when you're talking about, was 140 million people in Mexico. And how do you feel about the U.S. getting involved kinetically on the ground in Mexico?
I think that's an interesting thing. And just to piggyback a little bit on what Oscar said from the beginning, one of the things we've seen is if you look at Cabo San Lucas, for example, in Baja California Sur, so south of Tijuana, we are seeing, for example, Mayito Flaco did launch an offensive against Los Chapitos down there. But the key aspect is actually utilizing up-armored vehicles, the very famous Monstruos, right? These Technicals, Mad Max vehicles.
I've seen those, yeah.
Which is historically hasn't been seen that much in Baja California Sur. And it goes to his point, like that's this civil war and then the alliance with Jalisco New Generation, Los Chapitos kind of changed all that. Now going to the U.S. side and kind of this kinetic, I think Oscar gave you the answer though. Look, let's be real. The problem in Mexico and the Mexican cartels is corruption. That's the issue, right? And I would agree. So, can you bomb your way out of corruption? Can you bomb your way out of cartels? Especially when these organizations, in many aspects, they are adaptable. Like, are we really in a situation where, let's say, are we going to conduct an OIR, Operation Inherent Resolve-like campaign in Mexico, even if we decide to conduct military kinetic actions? I don't think so, right? It would require a lot. And the problem, though, you're going to run into is it's the corruption. There's your answer. Because the issue we're running into right now is the most effective anti-corruption bodies for Mexico are prosecutors in the United States. Right? Mm-hmm. Like if there is no legitimate, serious anti-corruption body in Mexico. It's a joke. It's a farce. Mm-hmm. How many times? Oscar, here's the perfect one. In Michoacan, for example, a leader of CG&G in Michoacan was detained, sent to prison. Before he was detained, obviously you see the narco bloqueos, like the narco blockades, violence. They try to let the guy escape. They failed. They put him into prison. And then a judge just signed off on some technicality or whatever. Now he's free to go. Right? There is no serious anti-corruption in Mexico, either from the judiciary and especially at the executive branch. And until that is properly addressed, it's like Afghanistan, right? You can't bomb your way out of corruption. And that corruption aspect in Afghanistan was a key thing that even Afghans then really were the reason why they supported the Taliban. And I think that's something that even when you look at cartel messaging, when they do these videos, these mantas and all these narco banners, etc., like in an ironic sense, a lot of the messaging that the Mexican cartel uses is this aspect of injustice and corruption, and almost like this Robin Hood-esque aspect of how they want to present themselves. And Michoacan, another example, we know CG&G has been very effective at getting Mexican farmers who do avocados and lime to support CG&G, because they portray the United Cartel as this predatory organization that targeted these farmers because they want the avocados, they want the limes to then traffic into the United States. So this is an example where drugs has really nothing to do with it. And the United Cartels is well documented to being supported by Mexican security forces, both police and military, right? And CG&G then leverages that and say, see, the Mexican government is supporting the United Cartels who are attacking farmers. Support us and we'll protect you from these. And I think that's the thing. It's the corruption. And Oscar just answered it for us. And until that is properly addressed, no, I don't think the military in and of itself is really going to address it. And the U.S. can't be the leading anti-corruption body for Mexico. There needs to be a serious push inside of Mexico to do that. Now, can the U.S. leverage tools to do that? Absolutely. The question is there a political will to do it? And I think that right now is a no.
So, Oscar, what are some of the ways that the cartels are making money besides drugs? We've seen, them getting into legitimate businesses and sort of perverting them, and like you're saying, the agriculture and that sort of thing. What other things are they into?
Well, before the Biden administration, when it was an open border, it was the market of human trafficking and child trafficking and all this massive influx that it was controlled all the way from the Colombian country, from the Cartel, El Clan del Golfo, connected to other cartels. But as we speak right now, they are really involved with YouTubers, influencers, special musicians that are doing these gigantic venues in the inside of the United States of America, and that drags a lot of the trafficking of women, the trafficking of children. Ultimately, right now, it is a big thing that is going on in the borders. They're recruiting a lot of the minors in elementary schools and junior high schools to do hit jobs. That's their way for them to get somebody to do a big job and offering them a pay, and then later on they assassinate them, and then you will find them in a mass grave. This is why we have a humongous mass grave situation right now in all the country. The whole country, it is a mass grave. They're really good now to use social media. So what they're doing is that, prostitution towards minors, it is utilizing to drag in the minors to be part of the cartel and offering them all this, lifestyle that is promised. It's a normalization in our culture. Yes, a narco culture that has normalized into elementary schools and into junior high schools. So they have used that venue a lot. They have become extremely smart on how to use technology and how to also use musical companies, production companies, influencers and bloggers. Yes, in Culiacan alone, they have killed, I think, that between 7 or 9 bloggers and influencers. That all of them, they're in cahoots, and they are colluded working with Los Mallitos. Some of them, they were working with Los Chapitos and La Chapitza. All of these situations, they use them to money laundering and to do all the other kinds of,
There's a lot of money to be made in that.
Yes, a lot.
I mean, you should know, you're a YouTuber yourself.
Yes,
So, in addition to, that's something I didn't know, with them taking advantage of influencers to make money. We've seen avocados, limes, oil. I've reported on cartels down in Colombia making almost as much or more money from illegal gold mining than they do from cocaine. What can you think of any others, Stefano?
I think other examples. So we said agriculture, water. We know they've even trafficked down on water. We know we've even had. I think there was a report on jellyfish. Like they've done jellyfish extortion. I think is a huge component as well, even for local businesses and trafficking routes for legitimate businesses, extortion and fees. And so I think when we're analyzing cartels, I think it's important to highlight. For example, I've always recommended this book and this author Nathan Jones. He wrote a book about kind of the difference between territorial cartels and transactional cartels. And if you analyze them from that perspective, right? For example, if you're looking at a lot of cartels, when we're analyzing Mexico, they're active in the border, right? Much more so than, let's say, inside where the drug manufacturing area is. So, like a perfect example of this would be the Juarez Cartel de la Línea, the Nuevo Cartel de Juárez, La Línea, and CDN, the Northeast Cartel, right? Those cartels, for example, they control border areas within the United States, but what they don't control is deeper inside of Mexico where the actual drug manufacturing happens. And so they rely on other organizations to push products to them, right? And that could be either from a human smuggling aspect or it could be a drug smuggling aspect, et cetera. When you're analyzing those cartels, for example, or other cartels, for example, deeper inside of Mexico, like the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel in Guanajuato, that's where the extortion piece really goes up a lot as well, right? And the control of legitimate business, et cetera. And so it almost becomes an additional tax on the local population. And I would even highlight the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel is very brutal in how they maintain their control of extorting businesses. And if they realize a business is either not paying them an extortion fee or paying an extortion fee to their rivals in Guanajuato, would be the Jalisco New Generation cartel, they have no problem conducting a mass shooting in this business, right? And so it's a whole encompassing, and I think that question, Chuck, that you asked about, outside of drugs, I think that's a key component of this, because a lot of times people automatically assume cartel and drugs, and what they need to understand is it's much more holistic, much more encompassing, and anywhere they can make used cars is something I just remembered right now. The used car business, especially stealing from the U.S. and back into Mexico, et cetera, repurposing it and then selling it.
Heavy
that's
equipment.
how they operate. Yeah, all that.
I've seen that
these are
too.
corporations, and that's how they operate.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to wind it up, but last question. What is the solution here? What needs to be done?
Well, the Trump administration is doing something that no other administration in history has done. That is, first and foremost, they wrote a letter from the White House accusing the Mexican government to be in cahoots with the organized crime and the cartel. That was a huge thing. What they need to be doing is what they have been doing lately, that is basically exposing the dirty politicians. Meanwhile, we do not expose the dirty politicians and we do not get rid of them. This problem is going to coexist. Now, what the Trump administration has done is given the courage to specific right-wing leaning political and
opposition
and
figures,
opposition, senators, congressmen, to rise up in Congress and in Senate and say, you know what, you're corrupt, you're involved, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
Just recently, people that were involved with Andrés Manuel López Obrador also was signalized by the American government. So these kind of things, they need to be exposed the most. More. We need more of this. And from there it can be a domino effect.
Shine the light on it, and that's the best disinfectant, right?
Yep.
What do you think, Stefano?
I think there needs to be a serious effort in the anti-corruption piece. My take is, we've seen corruption in Mexico across multiple administrations. I mean, and Enrique Peña Nieto is a perfect example of his high levels of corruption, where his basically national security advisor is sitting in U.S. prison because of corruption. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. It cannot just be a U.S.-led, the Southern District of New York or the Chicago or Los Angeles, right? These, courthouses there. I think that needs to be a much more serious thing. I think that the U.S. also, if we're looking at, for example, the first Trump administration, the Cienfuegos case, the former Mexican general, where because of negotiations and tensions with the Mexican government, they'd let them through. I hope that is a lesson learned, because General Cienfuegos was the head of the army. The U.S. detained him, indicted him. They gave him to the Mexicans under the promise that the Mexicans were going to investigate and indict him. They let him scot-free. And I think that needs to be a lesson for now, as Oscar mentioned, is saying, no, that's it. Not only in the U.S., but we should demand. And I think if Congress, the U.S. Congress, seriously starts putting more and more legislations in place to really target the corruption inside of Mexico at all levels, federal, state, local, military, judiciary, whatever, that would be an excellent first step in really addressing the root cause of the problem in Mexico, which is corruption.
Fantastic. Well, Stefano, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And Oscar, thanks for being here in Israel. Came all the way over here just to do this. And we will definitely keep in touch, Stefano, and like to have you on again sometime if you're up for it.
I would always love to. Thank you so much, Chuck. Thank you, Oscar. This was a great conversation. I'm glad we focused on one aspect that doesn't get enough attention, which is the corruption piece, much more so the cartel. Yeah. That's a key message that I want the listeners to do, so I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. Thank you.
Sure thing. And just one more time, tell everybody how they can find you.
Yes, you can find me at All Source News on X, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and Blue Sky. That's my handle, All Source News. So thank you very much.
Okay. God bless you. Take care.